another episode of Business Intelligence. Very happy to be back. We've talked about SEO, artificial intelligence. This episode, I want to focus on business process. Tell you what, I think I call it right. About a year ago, in the beginning of the pandemic, I got interviewed, and I mentioned this in one of our previous episodes, by a local newspaper. And he was asking me, so where is this going to lead us to? And I was like, I'm not an oracle, but I think this thing is not going to go away until maybe 3-4 years later.
Right.
So from the economic perspective, and what I can see here, from all the evidence and observations, I think the economic engine is humming, but there's not enough gas. I was at Panera Bread this morning, and I found out that they changed their business hours from 7 to 9 o'clock at night to now 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Right. And the reason was they didn't have enough staff. Right. And there was a big sign in the Panera Bread that says, please apologize. Please forgive us for not having certain items available because we're experiencing national shortage.
Right.
And like I mentioned in other episodes, this is not new, right? So you have all these businesses that are suffering from the shortage of ingredients, shortage of personnel resources. So we really live in a precarious world. Now, for all those businesses, there are things that you cannot control. There are things that you could control, right? And I wanted to have a theme for this episode that talks about business process, because business process is something that you could control, right? When I say business process, I particularly mean how you operate your business, how you handle, for example, leads coming in.
Right.
How do you handle serving customers, providing customer support, and getting the revenue, and then hopefully the repeating customers, right? You want the customers to come back and get more from you. So while I was at Panera Bread, I put in the order via app. So to me, that's a business process renovation and innovation.
Right.
Panera Bread, like Chipotle, they have invested millions, if not billions of dollars, ramping the infrastructure, allowing the customers to order online, digitally. And that effort has paid off tremendously, especially during the pandemic, right? And now that people got used to the idea of ordering online, people now order online, right? Because they don't want to wait in person. Although, obviously with the U.S. economy opening up, people now coming back to stores, they're willing to wait, but they were not willing to wait in line for like 20, 30 minutes. They much rather wanted to, put in the order and then go to the store and pick it up and be done with it.
Right.
Here's what I found out. Like over the weekend, I was at Panera Bread. I put in the order, right? It turns out that everybody put in the order digitally through their mobile app, and everybody was waiting at the scene, obviously because of the personnel shortage and because of the business process now being different. Like nobody is ordering at the cashier. So that to me is something that has changed significantly over time. I don't know whether you remember this or not. About 3, 4, 5 years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, McDonald's started utilizing all these kiosks.
Yes. Yep.
Right, with beautiful screen. They've made an investment, huge investment, putting all these machines in stores. Think about how many stores there is in the United States. McDonald's, they are in the United States. It's huge, right? In that annual report for that cycle, it actually revealed that McDonald's got to save so much in personnel costs, right? Simply because they, obviously they had to make the upfront investment putting together the machines. But again, that's business process. That relates back to how you serve your customers, how you view that as a very important part of your business process, and you want to keep bettering it.
Yeah.
Right? And now, how does that relate to entrepreneurs and business owners? So people have been focusing on the wrong thing, I believe. Because you see all these conversations and discussions around minimum wage, right? So we know the federal minimum wage is $7.25. you can never hire a person at 725, especially in a time like this when every business is looking for people.
Right.
We're talking about restaurant, stores, storefronts, all kinds of business spanning from all these industries, right? So 725 minimum wage level, I really don't think that's the point
Right.
for us to focus on, because 725 is irrelevant. You can never even hire enough people at 15, to a point that Amazon last week announced that they are going to increase their wage rate to $18 per hour. So when the going market rate is way above the minimum wage level is a fake issue.
Right.
Now, from the business owner perspective, that if your business relies on personnel resources, you probably are going to be in an uphill battle to bring your business to enough staffing level for your business to be well covered.
Right.
So what can you do to renovate? What can you do to change? Now, even on the hiring front, there's something that potentially you could do, right? So Joey and I, we had a client that came in last week. You want to talk about what the problem is?
Yeah. So I mean, they, like some of the other companies like you talked about, are being affected by the labor shortage right now. And so what they're looking to do is they need to optimize their hiring process to attract more of the right kinds of people that they're looking to work with. They're looking for certain people to take care of some of the labor that they have at their different factories and their facilities. And so they came to us like, how can we do a better job of this? They looked at some of the traditional channels like some job platforms, and they hadn't gotten too much return yet, and they still are being faced with this shortage. So they came in and they said, what can we do to create a better funnel for ourselves, so we can contact people, understand really quick like whether or not we're going to want to work with them. How do we move the process along more efficiently?
Right.
So yeah.
So we're not staffing companies.
No, yeah, we're just, they've got they've got the vacancies, they've got the people that can hire them. They have no idea how to fill that system with qualified candidates.
So it's the outreach effort.
Right. Yeah, that's what they're really interested in doing, and so we prescribed for them, a process that very much like what we would do when we have clients that are looking for traditional kinds of like inbound leads. So if they're looking for new customers or new clients, if they're in consulting or business to business type services, they need to create a better way of getting people in the door. So that's the first part, identifying where, like, who are you looking for? Where do we believe we can find this particular demographic? Setting up the different kinds of ads, pulling from the data that we can scrape from what Google is sharing, what Facebook and Instagram are sharing with us, and then of course measuring the ROI. In their case, they have a very specific metric that they're looking at, and that is cost per applicant. It's for them, CPA is cost per applicant. Where are they getting the most return? Is it from Facebook ads? Is it from Google ads? If it is Google ads, which type? Should we be focused more on search ads or display ads? Where are we getting the most efficient process to find these new applicants, so we can keep our other business processes fully staffed and so that doesn't hinder our growth?
At this point, you might wonder, why can't this particular business go to the traditional platforms like Indeed.com or all these headhunters? But you see, the outreach effort, the way that we characterize the problem is that you need to actively address the problem. You're not just posting the ads.
Right.
How do you get to the people that you want to hire, right? So all these job ad platforms, they are trying to gather all these applicants to look for jobs. But this particular type of client, because of the type of business that they're in, the target audience gathered by the platforms, by the job ad platforms, don't serve them well. Right. So again, that's an example of you actively looking for ways to better your business process, right? Not just relying on the existing tools available, but actively think about how you could do better, right? How you could, and I really like the way that you characterize the ROI, right? So it's cost per applicant. You want to find a process that could help you tie directly with the revenue position or with your end goal.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people are doing that right now because, you have the one-size-fits-all kind of solutions that exist everywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem. I think if you see even something like if you're if you're only focused on driving revenue, maybe your company needs to be more concerned with profitability. Like you
Right.
need to know relative to your specific instance right now, like what do you need to be measuring for? Find that one singular goal and then optimize the whole process around that. I think that's always the very first part of every conversation we have with clients when we're running a process for them. Where do we want to get to and how do we measure it?
Right. So we've had a lot more clients that been selling like intangible services.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of these businesses, their ultimate goal is to make connections, try to find that target audience remotely in the virtual world.
Right.
And we're blessed to be in a situation where probably 20 years ago, we didn't have like that wide of professional network.
Yeah.
So, or the professional network that existed 20, 30 years ago was being presented in a very different way. Right? Think about how you need to make connections 20, 30 years ago. I mean, you go to the cocktail parties.
You have your Rolodex, your business card stack.
Yes, you attended all these different functions and all that. I wasn't a particular fan of that kind of events, but I know at the time, when I was in a professional service industry, that was how I get myself out there. That was how I really get connected with the professional network. 20, 30 years later, now we have, by the way, I'm not that old. I just wanted to make sure that people understand that. But I think the landscape has shifted very significantly.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have all these tools available. I mean, talk about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Right?
Perfect example.
20 years ago, LinkedIn wasn't there. And now, and along the way, LinkedIn was being seen as kind of like the professional version of Facebook.
Yeah.
But now they've made enough improvements and pivots to be positioned even more differently at this point. Right? LinkedIn has now been used as so many different ways to establish leads, to make, to broaden your professional network, so many different purposes. And we've seen a lot of businesses start using LinkedIn as a part of their outreach effort. Have you seen the same thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's really come onto the scene. I think every business to business client that we've gotten, at least at some point, has asked about what is the most effective LinkedIn strategy? How can they be leveraging it? Should we be advertising on there? How much should we be budgeting for there? And I think the conversation's shifted now at this point to away from should we be on LinkedIn to how do we make the most of LinkedIn? And it's very different now.
Yeah, you see a lot of influencers
Yes.
on LinkedIn. And not only that, I mean, LinkedIn by itself provides a lot of education opportunities for professionals to better themselves.
Yeah, their platform in and of itself is really I think they've recognized it, and now the new even feature updates that they release. Did you know LinkedIn has stories now? I don't think it's a hell. I have not used it very much, but the fact that they're introducing features like this, they have. Like LinkedIn articles, like their own in-house blogging platform, which I think is unique from what you see on Facebook or Instagram. Right. But they have these different tools for people that want to really increase their voice on there because they realize that now companies and professionals and creators, like they're all they're aware of what the platform is and like what potential it has, and they're just trying to come up with more ways to help capitalize on it.
So the question is, how has that changed the business owners, right? How has that helped the business owners in thinking about their business process?
So I think one of the big advantages to that shift now is that people are like they're very aware of the platform and they realize that even if I'm not in like a traditional like business role, you see more medical professionals, for example. Like you see other industries that are outside of the traditional accounting, marketing, sales teams, like those kinds of roles. It's broadening more. If you're a professional in any type of industry now, I think I can make it's a general statement, but I think there's a place for you on LinkedIn now, and other companies are seeing this that do service those industries and saying, oh hey, now for the first time, if I am facing somebody in that industry, a LinkedIn campaign still might work for me. So now that's aggregating more and more of these different types of professionals. I think it's presented more opportunity, but then with that, back to what we started with, the question of how do we enhance that process, because now that you do have so many opportunities on there, it becomes harder to pinpoint the right strategy.
Right, there's a lot more noises.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a blessing too, right?
Right,
because the reason why there's a lot more noises is simply because there are more people on it.
Yeah. It's a good problem to have. It's it's abundance. Now there's so much going on. now I just have to pick and choose the right parts.
Right.
It's very, very different.
Right. With respect to the business process, I mean, LinkedIn started out as kind of like a platform that attract people to be on so that you could actually expose yourself
Right.
to better your job search process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's broader than that.
Yeah, now it's beyond that, right?
Yeah.
So we see and we utilize LinkedIn as a platform to help our clients generate leads at this point.
Yeah.
Right? Because LinkedIn allows you to pinpoint because you voluntarily provide all these information about your title and the organization and the role that you play and the job descriptions. Everything is on there,
Yeah.
right? So with a little bit of algorithm, exactly who the key decision makers are
Right.
for what types of products that potentially would interest them. And that's how we identify LinkedIn as a platform to generate leads, right? And there is an automation process behind that as well.
Yeah.
Utilizing LinkedIn as a platform to better the business process for, it doesn't matter what you do at this point. Because if your business involves making connections to people, and maybe 9.9 out of 10
Right.
chances your business involves with people because you want to make a sell.
Yeah.
Right. And the highly added value services are generally the ones that would allow you to not have a brick and mortar store to promote, right?
Yeah.
So all these services, how do you make connections? LinkedIn becomes a key component for you to better your business process. So that's just one part of it, right?
Right.
And we talked about in the previous episodes utilizing AI, SEO, all these different tools to serve your customers. To serve your customers better.
Mm-hmm.
But with respect to business process, are there more things that we could share?
Yeah, so I think sticking with LinkedIn as the example, I think it's a process that has a couple different components to it. So if we'll focus on what you talked about, generating leads through
Right.
LinkedIn.
Right.
Now there's all different ways to kind of define. Like you're trying to get a lead isn't just new contacts. It's somebody that is you're actively engaging with,
Right.
that you're measuring. You're at the top level of the funnel. How many people can you reach? How well can you reach them? What and as you work your way down at that funnel, having a different metric that you're watching every time. It's not just okay. We reached out to 1,000 people. That's great, but we want to go deeper. How many can we get to engage with us? And from there, how many people actually convert into customers of our service that we're providing?
Right.
So if
There's a whole slew of communication strategy behind it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that whole process. You can't look at it as just one singular, component. If we LinkedIn ad campaign, LinkedIn lead campaigns are, that's one option that you have. And that's where you just run an advertisement and you solicit leads. They go on, they sign up to either have a demo or they sign up to apply for a job, but sponsored posts with the goal of collecting contact information. Now that's a very, marginally, it's a very costly endeavor,
Right.
Compared to like a Facebook lead campaign or running a landing page.
Right.
That's more costly. So if you need something beyond just getting the information on that person to contact them, that might not be the best solution. That's where, again, when we talk about setting a really strong goal, whenever you're creating a new process, that's where it starts.
So we started this episode by talking about Panera Bread,
Right.
and McDonald's and their use of digital technology to allow their customers to put in orders and collect orders.
Yeah.
Because in their business, that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Get the customers in, get the customers out. I mean, the customers understand what Panera Bread offers, understand what McDonald's sells. So you don't need to really beat the dead horse, right? So they understand all that. But for your business, what is the key component? What is the core component in your business process?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's lead generation, as we talked about. Have you identified the most effective lead generation strategy? Sometimes it's the communication piece.
Right.
Right. So when the leads come in, are you messaging your service right, right, or products right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's customer support and customer service. Like, for example, talking about the banking industry, there's really not that much to differentiate, right? If I were to get a mortgage, for example, I mean, the only key point that I'm trying to focus on is how low the rate could be.
Right.
Right. I don't care whether I'm borrowing from the largest organization or the largest bank or the smallest community bank. As long as I could get the mortgage rate low,
Yeah.
I'm going to go with it. So every industry, every business is running with a different core value proposition. Identifying that core value proposition and just having a laser focus on whether or not the existing business process helps you promote that most that component with most added value is the key. Right. So we have many different clients that come to us. We see ourselves as a business consultancy because what we're providing is beyond tools. Right. We want them to understand. Oh, you know what? Lead generation wise, you could do better because of the industry that you're in, or you probably want to focus on a little bit on the customer end so that you could have that recurring piece to make sure that your revenue position is solid, right? And sometimes is the internal process, right? There was a client that we talked to, didn't even have the financial forecast in place, right? Now, he wanted to make all these different investments to better his business. But he doesn't even know, for example, a certain investment, how much would a certain investment cost? And I asked him the question. I said, I don't care, whether this particular infrastructure is going to cost $10,000 or $20,000. Do you have a potential revenue position to justify that? Right? And if you think that after you build that infrastructure, the business will come in, that's fine too. But you need to make an assumption. Is the newly generated revenue going to justify the infrastructural expense in 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months? Because time, there's a cost component in it, right? Time is money. Right? And I think that's what I generally worry about, where our clients are coming from, because they don't know, right? So, for example, that medical company that approached us last week, the personnel piece is very important because, in their business, they need people. They need physical labor to deal with that. Without physical labor, they cannot continue building on their business. So let's take care of that. Right. So if your business means that, if you're in a business where, potentially an automation process could take care of the marketing professionals, could take care of, the bookkeeping needs, right? Let's use the tools. Let's not hire people. Let's use the tools, right? But again, it requires you to have that self-awareness and really look at what your business needs, right? Do you agree?
Yeah, and I think is from all of our conversation today, looking at what are some of the components that really help you, because when you're defining that goal in the beginning, I think one of the common things you hear us bring up is cost per X.
Yes.
And that's not just, we talked about specifically cost per applicant, cost per lead. In past episodes, we've discussed cost per transaction. I think, those are very common ones. Businesses can have very specific ones. Like if there's some specific, there's some unique activity that you're trying to promote, can you do it at a cost-effective way? You're going to be, cost per whichever action that is. Even a few episodes prior, we talked about the use of AI to help you enhance your content creation, your content sharing across social media. What is in this case, cost per content, cost per piece of content?
Yes, that's right.
There's a numeric value that can be assigned to it, and you can understand where your expenses are going. If there's automation software that costs under $50 a month versus the hiring of an extra an extra person on your marketing team. What is there's your value, that difference in saving. Cost per piece of content that you can produce using the automated system versus the person. There are all these different factors to consider, and that's important when you set goals. Right,
and I think that having the understanding of maintaining the core personnel in your business is important. Right, because there are things that you could outsource. Right, so. Like Fiverr, you could go to Fiverr or all sorts of different other websites to find the freelancers that serve the purpose, right? And then you're looking at tasks that could be split up in pieces. Right, and in that case, you're literally hiring people in silos because you don't care about whether or not they adhere to your company vision or mission or not. It doesn't matter, right? You want to get the tasks done, right? And there are a lot of things actually that could allow you to do that.
Yeah.
Right. The core personnel, obviously, you don't want your CFO or CTO or CIO to not share your mission.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are things that you could do to better your business process without costing you an arm and a leg.
Right. And I think that's something important too. It's not necessarily that a caution against hiring.
Right. No.
It's more this frees you up to hire smarter.
That's right.
That's the big difference. If there are processes
That's
that
right.
you can expedite, you can automate, and you can bring down the cost per whichever action that is in your company, then you have more available resources to hire the right people to help you propel the company at the higher level.
Right.
Help push that mission forward, and I think that's the big benefit to enhancing your process.
And in the beginning of the episode, I briefly mentioned Chipotle, right? Because Chipotle made the similar investment in their infrastructure of allowing people to order online and use their app. Actually, Chipotle made that decision right after they were having trouble. Remember, there was an E. coli outbreak for Chipotle, and Chipotle's image was actually brought down significantly after that fiasco. And so they got a new CEO. I think they hired a new CEO from a former Taco Bell executive. I could be wrong, but this CEO was from outside of Chipotle organization. And he came in, his first prescription to Chipotle was to build that infrastructure to allow customers to order online. Now, mind you, at the time, when Chipotle was absolutely at the bottom, their revenue position was being challenged, right? Because their mission was to source, local ingredients, healthy organic ingredients. And because of the E. coli outbreak, it challenged their mission by questioning whether they have the infrastructure enough in place to monitor food safety. Because when you want to source everything locally, you have to have a system in place to monitor the safety. Because you're dealing with all sorts of different vendors.
Oh, right? You have multiple supply chains at that point.
Exactly, right? So it's difficult. So when the new CEO came in and when he made that decision of investing in the infrastructure, allowing people to order online, he was facing a lot of criticism, right? You could call it luck, because right after the infrastructure was built, COVID happened, right? And then at the time, people wanted to order online, and thankfully, Chipotle had at the time had already the system built in, right? But at the time when he made the decision, there was no COVID, and they just came out of the fiasco of the E. coli challenge. I often wonder, what gave him the courage to understand the importance of renovating the business process, focusing on the long haul, making sure that we're looking into the future. And I challenge every single business owner to think the same way. It's not about the status quo. It's how you pivot. It's how you get ready for the next wave, right? Identifying the core value, making sure that you understand what can be done to renovate and innovate, and you're always on the move, is the key. Anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think that really, I think that hits home. That makes sense.
Yeah. So we encourage all the business owners, if you, have some questions or if you wanted to, ask us for help, reach out to us. We're passionate. We're very eager to help business owners to solve problems. And I think the most important thing is knowing that we've served all these different clients across industries, we've seen enough and we understand potentially what your challenges are. And thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Take care, everybody.